Does JP Miller want to get arrested?
It feels like it.
I mean, there's a lot of recent updates of him just talking on TikTok about the case, right?
Yeah, and anytime you have to start, you're under investigation and you have to start your TikTok with, my lawyer told me this was okay. Your lawyer probably did not tell you that it was okay, and you should delete it.
Well, that's a question of mine. I mean, would his lawyer tell him that that's okay? I mean, isn't social media like strictly prohibited when you're in the middle of a case?
I mean, the clients can do whatever they want to do.
I would definitely encourage you to avoid social media.
That's very lawyery of you to say.
I would advise you that when you're under investigation from the FBI,
right,
you just freeze your entire life.
So right now with the Mica Miller case, and if you don't know what's going on, we have a previous podcast all about this. But as far as recent stuff, the FBI is involved. They are investigating. How long do we think that this investigation is going to go?
I don't know. It depends on what they're finding.
Yeah. I mean, could this be years or not likely?
I mean, it could be.
Really?
At least a couple more months, I would think. It sounds like they're really digging into everything.
Yeah. Well, when does that happen? I mean, when the FBI gets involved, what causes that? When does it switch from local to FBI?
Well, I think the local authorities in North Carolina requested for the FBI to step in.
Okay, the Robeson County Police Department?
Yeah. But is the FBI investigating the financial issues?
I think
that's more of the scope of what the FBI is looking
and
at.
I can't say for sure, but anytime there are, state jurisdictional issues, so did this crime happen in North Carolina or South Carolina? Mm-hmm. And here there's so many alleged things going on, right, in both states.
Yes.
That's when the federal government will come in and the FBI will investigate. So that way it's not, because, North Carolina police officers cannot investigate crimes that happen in South Carolina and vice versa. So you have to call in the feds.
Yeah. Well, and there's so much going on right now. I mean, it is like, not to be insensitive, but pieces of JP is like a soap opera. I mean, on his end. I mean, he is just hungry for that attention now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I think I watched some of the videos, and I think one of them was he was saying that Mica was so mentally unstable to the point where she was like having hallucinations and she was playing chess with someone who wasn't even there, and he would have to pretend to apologize for things that he allegedly never did because she just made them up in her head. And I think, at least what I got from it, he was kind of alluding that, the slashing her tires, that apology email that he wrote was him apologizing for things that she made up.
Well, isn't that the better way for him to attempt to discredit any evidence that exists, right? So the voicemails, right? How can we go back and discredit Mica's statements and the things that she's alleging and what she would have said in her restraining order?
I mean, there's so much. Right, there's so much against him.
That's how you go in and discredit, to say, here's this person who has these mental health issues, who had been recently involuntarily committed, and so we can't trust anything that they said. And I think that's just, a tactic to...
I think it's crazy, though, because this woman was, like, leading everything at his church, and she was around all of these people. And so maybe you can hide a little bit of your crazy, but if you're out here hallucinating things, you're not being in charge of a whole church institution, basically.
Right.
So I'm not sure. I feel the same kind of fear. I think he was reacting out of fear when he was, getting her body cremated so fast and trying to move that way. I feel like this is whatever the FBI is asking him about. Yeah, he's fearful of what's coming out. He's trying to do damage.
He's trying to control it. He's trying to control it, just like he controlled Mica.
Trying to debunk it, to
exactly
to take the heat off of him. To I don't know, like I said, to continuously attempt to discredit the claims and the allegations that are against him.
So JP is on TikTok right now. He's posting different videos, kind of giving updates. He's saying, that he's got 350 pieces of proof in regards to Mica and her thoughts before she died. So just further trying to, discredit her, disrespect her, all the things to, put shame on her name and make himself look great, which is what he has done from the get.
It's like just further evidence of how what they're saying could potentially be true, of how he treated her when she was alive, and the coercion that he allegedly used against her. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, direct quote from one of these videos is, "You're going to be shocked at some of the things that Mica says, and corresponded with me more than anybody else on planet Earth." So he's got the insight that nobody else knew. So
I don't know if I'm having to get to a position where I'm being investigated by the FBI and I'm having to hire counsel, I would be quiet. I would, and especially if I'm at a position where I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not going to be out in the public making these statements and TikToking and all this and that. Like, lawyer, advise me on what it is that I need to do, and how I need to cooperate with the investigation, because I don't have anything to hide, but I also didn't do anything, so advise me on how to go about that. And I wouldn't spend my time attempting to debunk it. I mean, I haven't been a subject of a TikTok phenomenon either, though.
Well, yes. I mean, and we have to remember too that JP is a speaker. He is a public, person where he's used to speaking to the audience. He's used to framing things in a way that kind of garners that
and utilizing his position in the church to garner support for what his position is. For he's used to framing his
very
story
convincing.
However it is that he wants,
exactly,
and wanting that attention in that limelight.
Exactly.
And that's what I was gonna say. So his ex-wife has recently released a bunch of information, but she filed court documents to have sole custody of her children that she shared with JP.
Yep.
And she wrote, and this is a quote, so she recently asked the judge to grant temporary sole custody of their 2 youngest children with all contact suspended. And then there's a quote from her filing that says, "Initially, I was okay with phone calls and text messages. However, when recently texting with the children, JP has inappropriately discussed the current state of events with them, sharing his plans of suing everyone and being a millionaire."
Wow.
So he really this is an attention grab. He might.
Oh yeah, that's how it comes off, I think.
Sick.
To slander. I mean, I guess we'll see the evidence to see if it's slander, but just to talk so poorly of your deceased wife,
right?
Which we all saw that when he announced it to the congregation right after it happened. We all saw what little care he had for her, and this death. And so, I think it's really cool of the ex-wife. I mean, here she is at a time in her life where she's past that period, where she's had to deal with him. I'm sure, I don't know her, but I'm sure she's dealing with post-traumatic stuff from him. And then this whole thing happens and it brings her back into the limelight. And I know initially she was kind of trying to stay out of it with everything going on. But now I think it's really cool that she is fighting for Mica as well as Mica's family. And she's now working with the FBI and working with the police department to help with that.
Also, just kudos to her, because as a mother, one of the primary things that we're trying to do is protect our children.
Sure.
And so if something like this of this nature is going on, that's so right in front of you, you're trying to protect your kids from social media, it's all over the television, and then to also have their father coming in and saying whatever it is about all the things that they're seeing. And I can imagine, I don't know what their ages are, that people in the community would be coming and saying things as well. And so as a mother, my primary goal is the protection of my children.
Sure.
Right. And I think not just what the children would be learning or what's coming out, because I'm not sure of their ages either, but eventually this is all going to be on the internet forever.
Yeah.
What's coming about his relationship with Mica, but not only that, about his relationship with their mother, that relationship.
That's true.
That
That's
they probably
true.
didn't know all of these details of.
Sure.
And now, the abuse because she had alleged abuse before and had to get out of the situation.
Yep.
All having to explain that to your children when you're not at a point to do that, and then still have to co-parent with this man has got to be so difficult.
Oh yeah.
For her to navigate.
Oh yeah. I mean,
and I can imagine that he would probably make it difficult to navigate
for sure
as well. And so it's times where you're just going to have the court step in to kind of help you in that process and to lay down some groundwork of, look, this is how we're going to navigate this. This is what you can and cannot do when we're raising our children and trying to co-parent during this very difficult time.
Absolutely. Yeah, kudos to her for sure. And I know that there was a question about, well, why full custody of the two younger ones but not the two older ones? And I think the two older ones are adults at this point, so they don't really need to be as sheltered as the two little ones. I think the littlest, the daughter who's younger, wasn't allowed already to stay over at his house because of his, I don't know, the alleged pedophilia that has come out a little bit, and all of that. So I think already there were some restraints on the daughter, but I really hope that they grant that, the full custody, because I would be super nervous to allow my children to go over without me. I mean, even prior to this, and now, I don't know, maybe this is a good way for her to use that to keep them full time, but yeah.
I mean, allegedly, he's got a track record of manipulating children, right? Mica was a child. We've heard about all of this going on, and so who's to say he's not feeding his own children his narrative of what he wants them to know, and that's got to be scary.
Yeah, and some unsung heroes in this as well as Micah's family. I mean, they are really fighting for her, which is amazing. It kind of reminds me, well, it's a very different case, so maybe I won't bring that up, but there was another case that the family was just, they never lost hope and they continued to fight. So I love that about her family. I'm reading something now about the how the family has urged legislators to amend a bill regarding domestic violence, and call it Micahs Law. So how cool would that be?
I saw that. So Mica was represented by Regina Ward in the divorce proceedings that had just been initiated prior to her death. And I've seen the press conference where Attorney Ward was urging that this bill be considered by legislatures. And I saw a statement where, she was saying that she wanted the bill to get right in front of one of our legislatures in the area, Luke Rankin. But I also saw that, and I don't know, I guess it was kind of like, oh gosh, why hasn't it been done?
Sure.
It was kind of the conversation in the press conference, but I saw that that Luke Rankin went on social media and commented and just said that nobody had actually brought that to him, that there weren't any victims advocates or any officers or family members or anybody, community supporters, that had said to him that this is what they wanted. But now he's aware. I looked at some of the things that they were asking to be added in, and they were essentially saying that if you had 2 or more instances of these coercive acts, and it had it listed. I don't know if we have it printed.
I don't. I could probably find
that
it.
They wanted to add to it, but I think I do think that when you don't have allegations that rise to the level of I'm being beat, right? When I can't show scars, when I can't show black eyes, when I can't show broken bones, that doesn't mean that the manipulation and the way that someone has mentally controlled you. One of the things that it said was, if a person makes threats to you and in turn threatens to remove your food or your shelter or your money and take the access to those resources from you, that in the new bill would rise to that level of being against the law.
We need something like that,
right,
for sure.
Right, because it's not gonna be all the time that I can show you something that's physically wrong with me, right? But denying and taking my access to money. Think about how many women can't leave the abusive domestic partner because they don't have the funds to do so.
And this is not the first time in the law where we see this sort of the forethought and we recognize what abused women go through. We have the battered woman defense.
Right.
You don't have to wait to be killed to defend yourself. So why, when it might not be he's gonna kill me, it might just be like, he is gonna beat me, he is gonna starve me, and I know that this is gonna happen. So you shouldn't have to wait.
He's threatened to do so. He's manipulating me mentally and causing me this mental anguish that is putting me in a position where I cannot leave because I can't take my kids if he has the access to the account and I can't, where can I go? How can I afford it? How can I leave if he tells me that he's going to hire the best family court lawyer and I won't be able to afford it because he's taken away my access to the accounts? And so I definitely think, yes, we need to move into it. I would certainly support a bill that takes into account some type of coercive and manipulation and mental type of anguish.
Well, how many times have we talked about this? Like, oh, why do we wait, and then we have somebody who dies, and it took them dying to do any kind of action. I mean, it's just, there's so many stories about this. They go to the police 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, nothing's ever done.
And then taking it back to Mica Miller. Okay, so in this instance, if she did in fact commit suicide, but she did it because of the treatment that she received,
because of the coercion,
right?
Yeah, or if there were threats,
right? This is just throwing it in your face and really putting it in the forefront for you to be able to see that, look, the actions of another person when they are allegedly mentally abusive to you, and the things that they have put you through. And that even when you got the nerve, right, to file, that still you pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
And the way that our current law is set is there is no charge for that.
Right. And that's what's sad about this, because I think that a lot of people feel, and I've seen it said even in the comments on our videos, you know, even if he didn't pull the trigger,
right,
he still killed her.
Yeah.
Right.
Because of the relationship and how she felt in that relationship. And she was very vocal. We could say allegedly, but she was very vocal about how this relationship impacted her, and drove her to do it. If anything was driving her to do that, this was the only thing that she couldn't get away from. At least that's what she talks about.
Right.
So there's not any charges that can be brought under our law now, you know, unless they can prove that he killed her. As far as Mica goes, all of this abuse and stuff is just, he gets to keep on living because she died.
Right?
Yeah.
She didn't even have enough under our law at the time when she went and requested a restraining order. She didn't even have enough that rose to the level of our current laws for her to be able to receive a restraining order.
Well, you know, and I asked this out of ignorance of not really knowing the process, but do the police ever issue like warnings or anything to these people? Like if somebody goes and files something like, oh, they're doing this, that, and the other.
No.
Nothing's ever like, hey, this has been said about you. You need to not do that. Her face tells me everything.
Girl,
I feel like
no.
should that happen, or would that make it worse on the victim?
No, I mean, you know, the police are here to serve and to protect, right?
Yeah.
And so the only thing that they can do is go in and enforce the laws as written. And if the laws as written do not provide that, you know, what the allegations are that you committed a crime, at what place would they have to issue a warning?
And you don't want to put that on the police either.
Sure.
Just to give them broad authority to say.
Yeah, no, I know. I just hate that nothing
away.
happens. It just
it's really going to
annoying.
start with changing the law.
Yeah, true. And we were listening to a voicemail to JP's ex-wife where Mica was kind of asking for help right before all this happened. I don't know the timestamp for that, but
it says that the recording is undated, but it came out as part of the ex-wife's participation in the investigation in her recent filings.
Yeah.
But it's a really sad voicemail where Micah's just asking her for forgiveness and for the name of her counselor, because she feels like she needs a counselor too.
And it's heartbreaking.
You hear this with victims of abuse. Knowing them, a lot of times they will reach out to the woman that was abused before. You know, that happens all the time. So I'm not surprised.
She's the only one who gets it, you know?
I'm not surprised that when you're in that, even with, you know, the infidelity. So,
Well, there's a desperation there. You don't do that unless you are at your wit's end. You know what I mean?
Right. Because, you know, and I think it's not allegedly anymore, because the ex-wife has filed and said that she was aware that Mica and John Paul were having an affair behind her back. And so Mica and Allison were not friends by any sense of the word, right? Mica participated in what was the dissolution of the marriage. I'm sure there were other reasons, obviously, which are also alleged. But for Mica to reach out to Allison is like,
Yeah, it's big.
For
And
counseling is desperation.
And you can tell she's crying on the phone call or on the voicemail. And there's just such heartbreak when you hear it. It's just so sad to hear.
Yeah.
You know, you can just tell that she's hit bottom.
It's hard to hear somebody in pain and
Sure.
seeking out just someone who would understand.
Mm-hmm.
You know, anytime that you're going through something, you want to find somebody who's similarly situated, somebody who's gone through it,
who got out of it.
Yeah, right. So that you can have that hope.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The hope that you can make it out to.
I think this also follows along the lines of, you know, Mica was really trying to self-help, you know? I mean, she was really trying to do all of the steps she felt like she needed to do. She was out on her own. She was working. She was going to church. She was listening to the self-help, you know, I think it was a podcast or some sort of recording of a pastor. And I feel like this step of trying to reach out to a therapist and reach out to the ex-wife, I just feel like she was really trying to do all the things she needed to do to overcome as best she could.
Yeah.
So I just hate that it ended up with this, you know, suicide. The family, I was just reading something. Not the family, JP has asked that all of the courts seal the records of her family's case against him. So can you explain what that means and why he would be asking for that?
What he's referring to is, well, sometimes the courts will issue something called a gag order, which basically says you can't talk about it in the press and in the media. And then sometimes they will order court proceedings to go under a seal. And so instead of most court filings, you can actually go into the courthouse and pull them. And
Yeah.
You can go. Some court filings are also, once you file them, copies of them are online in the public records.
I think that's
And
what he's
so,
mad about,
yeah.
is all that old stuff filed from Mica and the ex is public. Anybody can go and pull that up.
Yeah. He'll be all right.
Yeah, I just can't. His privacy is just cannot be the court. Courts are of public record.
Right.
So
yeah, he'll be all right.
he'll be all right for sure. And I think I don't know. It's sad. The stuff that her family has been coming out and saying. I did not realize that she had I think her father said she had a tattoo of his signature on her body, and he felt like John Paul thought he owned her.
Oh, for sure.
That is so creepy.
That's very creepy.
It's a hard no.
It's hard
It's like
no for
you're
me.
signing
for
her
me.
like she's property.
And even with him trying to do the gag order, he claims that it would protect the wife's public image, Mica's image. You know, because then
The same man who says he's going to release 350
Exactly.
pieces of evidence disparaging her.
he just keeps trying to
The same one
you know.
that says that she has mental health issues and everyone knew about it. And
It's hard because I want to see evidence of the mental health issues in situations other than involving him.
yeah,
You know, because if you're mentally ill to that point, you can't control when and where this is happening. And so,
yeah.
are she mentally ill, or is she,
Mm-hmm.
an abused woman?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he
This
really
is-
did all those things. It's gaslighting at its biggest form.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this trial is going to be like public for everybody to see, kind of like they did with the Murdaugh trial? You think it'll be like
You mean like her family court thing?
when JP goes to trial?
He hasn't been charged with
He hasn't
anything.
been charged with it.
No? Oh, well,
Mhm.
he's talking like when this goes to trial, there's going to be so many lies that come out. So I think he's already planning on it too.
Yeah.
But I'll go ahead and put the alleged word out there a bunch of times, allegedly, so I don't get in trouble. But yeah, I mean, he's just claiming that he has all this information. He is so innocent, and when this all comes out and he can speak about it, the world will know what a saint he is. It just blows my mind. A couple of recent developments is the Micah's sister, Sierra, who has been very vocal from the start about all this. She has, let me read this. Probate court filings by Mica's sister Sierra to become special administrator of Mica's estate. So what would that do?
So I think, and I saw that they just recently won possessions of all of her belongings and
Good.
things like that. So when you pass
Good.
away
Yeah.
and you're married, and you don't have a will appointing a personal representative or a special administrator of your affairs and your belongings and your everything, it'll go to your husband if you're married. And if not your husband, then your parents or your children, depending on your relationships. So John Paul, because she didn't have a will, from what I understand, was the natural person to be this personal representative and the special administrator of her estate. It's important because, one, I know that her family wants her belongings and they want to be able to go through everything, figure out what happened, and also that's their loved one.
Sure.
Yeah.
But two, if they ever want to bring a case against John Paul, they have to be in a position to do so. So if they want to sue him civilly, excuse me, then they have to, he can't sue himself. So he can't be the personal representative, special administrator of her estate and then sue him. He would never do that. And so the family had to go to court to have someone appointed, and it's her sister who's going to be in charge of those affairs and making those decisions about everything that has to do with Mica legally.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. And let's remember too that Mica specifically said, I think there was a text or a voicemail from her, but quote unquote, if I end up with a bullet in my head, it was not me, it was JP. I mean, there's so many things like that that are out floating. I mean, it's no wonder that they are truly fighting this case. There are still theories floating around that somebody was with her at that state park. Again, that's a theory. It's, not fact or proven or anything like that. But what a weird thing that would be if somebody kind of lured her out there and kind of made it look like a suicide. I mean, I don't know. I'm interested to have all this stuff out. What are the next steps here? I mean, what would it take for JP to be tried and arrested and all the things?
There's got to be some evidence that he committed a crime,
And that's kind of what the FBI is looking into right now.
Right.
But not pertaining to Mica, more so pertaining to all of his other allegations with fraud and money laundering and all the other things, right?
Or anything else. I mean, there's a lot of things that are alleged with his relationships with underage women and all that stuff. If they can find evidence of that, those are all crimes. But like the domestic violence against Mica is not going to be, there's not probable cause for that. There was, but now she's passed away. So, investigating that relationship, I think is going to lead them down a different, a bunch of different trails maybe to something else. But I think that's the scariest part is that he can talk about using this fame from this to become a millionaire and get views on TikToks, and like his influence is growing even bigger, and there might not be anything that you could arrest him for, even though he just does not sound like a great man.
No.
That deserves that kind of stage or spotlight.
Right.
Well, and at the beginning of June, the family shot a video where they were saying that as of that time, I think it was maybe June 3rd, the Robeson County Police Department and the FBI had not reached out to the family for any kind of help or insight or interview, and they were kind of seemingly annoyed at that fact of all this happening, but them not being questioned on anything. So, just some interesting tidbits for this.
And I can understand being frustrated because, the family could offer to the police, potential motives of another person and backgrounds into her thought process at that time and what she had been going through. But then I could also understand that the Robeson County was looking at the evidence that was in front of them. But as a family member, if my family member was going through that and that had happened to them, I would have wanted them to come talk to me as well. I would want them to look into the background and what her what her motivations are.
Yeah.
Because you're looking to see whether or not someone has the motive to do something to her or whether or not it was something self-inflicted.
Right. And I think that's kind of why this whole thing blew up anyway, because you see in every other situation where a wife dies, the husband is a suspect, or when the husband dies, the wife is initially.
Right.
In this case, I mean, they were like holding, it felt like, JP's hand and letting him do whatever he needed to do, like, oh, your poor wife. And then the family had to begin this outcry of, we want answers.
Let me
it wasn't
tell you
like
what was going on.
It wasn't like he said.
Right. And just, the more of the allegations that are coming out is that JP took out 2 separate mortgages on the home, and that he owes Mica. So the family contends that this use of marital funds, as well as Micha's financial contribution of $90,000 worth of home upgrades and improvements, entitles her to equal distribution of the house. And the family is trying to change her last name back to her maiden name, Mica Francis, or it would just be dropped to make it Mica Acacia, something like that, her first and middle name. If granted, the death certificate and all other relevant documents would reflect that change. So some interesting stuff that is kind of new developments going on there. I'll be curious to see kind of what happens with that.
Yeah, I don't even know if that's possible.
What would be the point of that? Just because they despise him so much, they want to change it back?
I
Or
think it comes from pain. This family feels that this man has killed Mica.
Yeah.
And there's not going to be any recourse, and she's going to die with his name and married to him, even though she didn't want to be, and killed by him, or allegedly killed, died because of him. And it's just pain. It's hard to hear. For me, to hear her family and to watch those videos are hard to watch, because you just see people like searching for answers and wondering why nothing could have been done earlier. Yeah. And I don't know that they're ever going to get
closure.
I don't know that there is anything under the law that can make them that can give them what they're going to need.
Yeah.
You know, to punish him or to free Mica. It's kind of too late.
Yeah.
So that's the really sad part for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a couple sources that you guys can kind of continue to follow this Mica Miller story. Obviously, us is the first source. This is where we want you to come. But there is a website that has been kind of dedicated to all of her updates. I think it's Justice for Mica or Mica Miller or something like that. But there's also a Facebook page. It's not even a page. It's a personal page of Kyler Marlowe. I don't know if you guys have landed on her page or not. She's been she is not an official, she hasn't been employed. She's not an official legal representative or anything like that, but she has kind of done her own investigation on this. She knew Mica in middle school. She has a private investigator who's working with her pro bono, and she has that she works with the family. They give her updates. So she's been a really great source for me to just kind of pop in every so often and get some background information, and also just public records that have been pulled and all that good stuff as well. So, we're going to keep talking about this. I think our last podcast on this was we got so much feedback and conversation that it was really great to read through.
Yeah. And I think I personally, since learning that he wants to be a millionaire from this, have stopped watching his TikTok videos from his source.
Yeah.
So I'll watch someone else talking about it.
Yeah.
And playing it in the background, but I'm not giving him that click.
What do you think it is about this case that has made it so kind of worldwide interest?
Sad.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got all the things with alleged murder and financial crimes and
the
churches
mystery of it, and so much stuff that's on video,
there is a lot you can get. Yeah. You can get connected to a lot of these videos, and then you feel like a personal relationship.
And the court filings and the videos of him preaching, and I don't know, and it has all the mystery and
that's true.
And there's just so much also I think that's unknown, so there's always things to talk about. We're going to be filling holes and gaps until we get answers, and that's always something that keeps the public eye on it.
Yeah. Well, stick with us on this podcast. We'll be back with more updates. You can follow us on all your social media devices. Also, justiceslovely.com is our website. And so you can visit us online there. And we look forward to hearing from you on YouTube as well.